Well, and speaking of being active year round, I think that's a great time to pivot to talking about 1,000 miles to Memphis,
Yeah.
because you are engaging in community actions, you're connecting with people, you're having conversations. Can you talk about why you thought it would be a good idea to like put boots on the ground right now?
I work with an amazing team of activists and scholars, and we were contemplating what can we do in these midterm elections to be more consequential than these no kings marches, where we go out, rah rah, no kings, have funny signs about Trump, and we go back home. Like that's great. It's community, and I will never discourage people from going out. But I've always said that if all you do is go out, hold a sign, and go back home, and don't do anything else, then you've actually wasted a lot of time, because that could have been time spent registering people, supporting candidates, supporting orgs, getting money in front of the right people. And so the philosophy behind 1,000 Miles to Memphis is the Calais decision is just the latest example of the Supreme Court gutting voting rights. And we're at a point now where, with some of the restrictions that are being proposed and passed, the SAVE Act, for example, that if these things become law now, we are legitimately looking at a scenario where Black people will have fewer voting rights in 2026 than they had in 1956. And that's fundamentally a problem. And so what we thought is, hey, our team of content creators and activists and scholars, we have more than 30 million social media followers across our platforms. What if we marched through the South to elevate the organizations on the ground, give them our megaphone, and let them share the work that they've been doing? And so we've worked already with Stand Up Nashville, Equity Alliance in Tennessee, NAACP, several immigrant rights organizations, the Apex Museum in Atlanta, and the list is I can't list them all, it's like 25 different orgs, that we are literally marching from Nashville to Atlanta, to Jackson, to Birmingham, all the way back up to Memphis. It'll be just over 1,000 miles. And the idea is go on the ground, march in the footsteps of the civil rights leaders who did the work, elevate the organizations on the ground who've already been doing the work, and show the world that, hey, these are the people who are the tip of the spear. A lot of them are Black-led organizations. They are taking the brunt of this work, and they're not getting the flowers that they are owed. So let us elevate them and then raise money. I can already say with complete confidence that we're going to be able to raise at least $50,000 for these local organizations. My personal goal is to get above $100,000, because you got to put your money where your mouth is. It can't just be a rah rah. I got this many clicks and likes. Show me the money, to quote Jerry Maguire. And so that's the vision. We're also trying to get as many people registered to vote as possible. And if you go to 1000milesofmemphis.com, you can do one of three things. You can register to vote and register everyone you know to vote. You can sign up to join us for a leg of the march. It's great. We've got food. We've got an RV. It's a lot of fun. Or you can donate to Just Win Humanity, our nonprofit that is sponsoring all this. And these are funds that will go ultimately to the organizations on the ground as well.
I think that's so fantastic and so necessary, because I had the opportunity to talk with some of the organizations that you are on the ground with. I think it was Equity Alliance.
Yeah.
And they have a playbook for fighting back against the fascism. Yep. And they have a winning fight against flock cameras, for example. Yep. I believe it is in Tennessee. And that's one of the issues that is bringing people together. No one likes these flock cameras. And so by elevating those voices, hopefully people in other communities can say, hey, those people in the South, they're not our enemy. They're not seeking something. We all want to get rid of this ongoing surveillance. It makes me very afraid to step foot back in America, because I feel like a camera is just going to be right in my face. What other issues are you seeing that are bringing people together?
I mean, I think that the single biggest issue that I keep coming back to is just poverty, wealth, and economic inequality. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired. People are tired of being, poor. I remember I was working in Virginia with a homeless shelter, and led by a Black woman, of course, because Black women are the ones who lead with empathy on these things more than anyone else. And she said something to me that kind of shook me. She said that 85% of the people who are in this homeless shelter have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And that surprised me, because in my arrogance, I thought, well, once you're educated, you don't have to worry about these things anymore. And she said that we live in a country where 99% of us are two simultaneous disasters away from being homeless. You lose your job and your house burns down. You get cancer and your insurance lapses. You get a divorce and your partner leaves you with all the debt and takes off on their own. These are all very common things that happen. And so on this march, what we're finding is that economic injustice and poverty is a huge issue. So we are actively looking for the food banks as well to have more community organizing to ensure just people have access to basic things like food. And I think, and we're seeing the success of this, right? I'll go back to Zoran Mamdani for a second. He was chastised for saying, I'm not going to hire 5,000 more cops for New York City. And people said, well, crime's going to skyrocket, murder's going to skyrocket, burglary's going to skyrocket. New York City is enjoying the lowest crime rate in history right now because he took that money and he invested in public social services and public safety, in community organizing, in libraries, in opening up parks, in fully funding schools and hiring more teachers. And I think that's the driving message that we can use, that we're seeing on the ground as we march through these cities and towns, that people really just want to have economic security, and they're being driven apart by culture wars and by racism because it's a good wedge. But when it comes down to the core of it, I found that if we can guarantee people have the confidence that they can feed their kids and put a roof over their head, it solves a lot of problems.
As a cop who spent 20 years fighting crime, how it is that politicians, I get it because it's not politically convenient to certain politicians and certain political groups, but 95% of the quote unquote criminals that I interacted with, their crimes were economically motivated. And I worked narcotics for my entire career, and the vast majority of individuals that were engaging in criminal conduct did so because they were trying to feed their families, feed their children, or feed themselves. Yeah,
very painful to see. And
the fact that it hasn't shot up in New York, despite there being economic pressures everywhere, seems like it speaks to the fact that people in New York have hope, on top of the fact that there are now perhaps more services available and more compassion in general in the city. It's that hope factor that says, hey, maybe there's a way. There's something that's going to give me a helping hand to get out of this situation, and I don't have to turn to crime.
That's right. And we're seeing these models elsewhere. Michael, I don't know if you saw the model out of Denver, where they, instead of deploying law enforcement on a 911 call for mental health or substance abuse, they deployed medical personnel to pick them up and get them treatment. And in the pilot alone, there were nearly 800 deployments. Not a single person was arrested. Not a single act of violence. No person sent was harmed. The people in need of care weren't harmed, and 800 people got the treatment that they needed. And now they've deployed that as a more standard strategy, because you've seen the data that, Time did a study on this where they studied 13 million 911 calls and found that 94% of them were for nonviolent issues that you don't need a police officer to handle. And so when we talk about what defund the police means, it doesn't mean cut your paycheck. It means let's have police officers allocated to actual acts of violence that they're trained for and they can provide security and protection for. But the other 94%, you're not a narcotics, substance abuse expert. You're not a mental health expert. You're not a suicide prevention expert. You're not a domestic violence expert. There are people who are trained for that. So let's fund those individuals who are experts in those spaces and have law enforcement go where they're experts in those spaces. And what that means is overall broader public safety. So this is one of the things that pisses me off about corporate Democrats like Schumer and folks on the right, because Democrats like Schumer think that they can win over Republicans by just being more Republican than Republicans are. And go ahead.
No, it also pisses me off about the institution of policing and its reluctance to embrace new ideas and new plans like that. As somebody who had, throughout the course of my career, responded to calls like that, no amount of training that the academy or that any of these reoccurring training courses that we participate in could prepare you like a medical doctor or like a nurse for these types of situations, who literally go to school, receive degrees, and continued ongoing training to deal with those types of situations. And law enforcement should embrace it. Individual officers should embrace it because it makes us safer. These are dangerous situations that we're not prepared to deal with. Why wouldn't we embrace a solution that is so common sense?